Hello and welcome to Podcast of Lincoln Geek. I'm your host, the podcaster general, the Dan Face, and I am joined by my regular friend and regular co-host. We have the Pete. Say hello, Pete.
Hello, Pete.
Gone for the classic one there, Pete.
I've gone for the classic one, yeah. I need to think, I'm trying to think of a good collect one. I feel like another fine podcast from my collection doesn't quite sound right.
It's not quite catchy enough, is it?
No. And because of my logical mind, I don't have a physical cassette tape. For those of you old enough out there to know what one of those are of the podcast, so I need to think of something else I can do that emphasizes collecting.
Well, it's a never-ending journey.
Yeah.
The strive for perfection for
Oh yes,
catchphrases.
absolutely.
So I empathize with you there, my good friend. Well, anyway, thank you everyone for tuning into our little show about board games and other random geeky stuff. We're branching out a little bit, but just because literally not playing as many board games as I used to, because since I made the foolish decision to reproduce. So we're branching out, but there's loads of fun stuff we can talk about. It's called Diary of a Lincoln Geek. It's not just about board games, so we're expanding a little bit. However, today it is about board games, ironically. We're doing a game spotlight on one game we've talked about loads, so I figured we'd just literally focus just on that one game and gabber on about it for about 20 minutes or so. How's that sound, Pete?
Oh, wow. I love this game to bits, so that's fine. I'm more than happy to talk about it.
So the game is Hello Kitty Island Adventure.
Oh, yeah, fantastic game.
Oh, wait, no, wrong episode. Sorry. We're talking about Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. Very similar games. Well, are you still
is it about thrills, kills, and chills?
It thrills, chills, kills. Yes, it's the most exciting games of all. Well, yeah, we've talked about this game quite a lot, but in a nutshell, did you want to do the summary, Pete? What is Deception,
sure.
Murder in Hong Kong about? And I'll just chime in a bit there.
So, as I briefly mentioned in a prior podcast, it's similar to a degree to the Resistance Avalon games, where everyone's dealt out a hidden role, usually either inspector or killer. But one player will be will be given the role of forensic scientist, isn't it?
I think it's the scientist, yeah.
Yeah, scientist. And effectively, every other player is then dealt out 4 evidence cards, which are usually blue, I think, and 4 murder weapon cards.
I think the weapons are blue and the clues are orange or red or something.
Yeah, orangey red. I don't have a physical copy of this game yet, although I have found this on Amazon, so I'll be hoping to. I will be. I'll come to that shortly. But yes, so correction: the murder weapon cards. There are murder weapon cards which all have a blue background, and evidence cards that will have an orangey ready background. And the idea is that the player draws 4 of each card type at random, and then places them in front of them, and they are their evidence and their murder weapons. Then, once the player who is dealt the killer cards knows their role, they will then have to choose during a night phase where everyone's got their eyes closed. Night phase is probably not the right term, but whatever. Anyway, they have to pick a murder weapon and an evidence so that the forensic scientist knows who the killer is, how they killed someone, and what they left behind. So, for example, they might know that, say, for example, Dan clobbered someone over the head with a PS3.
I've never lived that down, Pete. I've only killed one person with a PlayStation. That's all I've ever heard of ever since.
Well, actually, no. I think an OG Xbox would work way better as a murder weapon. I think.
Oh yeah, that would be instant.
Someone over, yeah. Well, not just that, you probably clock someone over the head with it, and then plug it back in and play some Halo afterwards. That would do any internal damage to it, just because of how hefty that thing was. Anyway, so Dan clocked someone over the head with an OG Xbox, played some Halo afterwards, but actually left some playing cards at the scene. So I, as the forensic scientist in that particular round, tries to point people to Dan and his oddly stained Xbox.
That sounds dodgy out of context, there, mate.
Dodgy, yeah. I was thinking more blood, but
we'll go with that. Well,
yeah,
I mean that's a good intro there, Peter. I mean, I said this last time we talked about the game, and I quite like the idea. When describing Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, I could consider it as what would happen if Resistance Avalon and Codenames had a baby.
Yes,
You basically have a hidden loyalty game to a degree. You've got one person that knows the answers, but isn't allowed to tell their team the answers. They have to try and communicate via clues. So I think there's like a similar game called Mysterium, where one person is like a ghost trying to explain how they died to the investigators. However, this game is a bit different because it's not entirely co-op. One of the players who is investigating the murder, is actually the murderer. And
Mm.
Pete is quite right. You've all got 4 cards in front of you of each type. So you've got 4 murder weapon potential murder weapons and 4 potential clues. For most of the investigate players, these are meaningless because you're not the killer. However, the killer will point out to 2 of them, and then in the night stage, as Pete described, will indicate to the scientist how they killed the victim and what clue they left behind. And then the scientist will then, once everyone has opened their eyes again, the scientist will try and get their team, which are the police in the default game. I think you can mix it up with the expansion and different roles and stuff. But the good team, the scientist is one of the good team. They've got to try and get their team to figure out who the killer is, what the murder weapon is, and what clue they left behind at the scene. So they get like a selection of clue kind of cards, like the murder location, cause of death, and then you typically get some that are less useful as well. And the scientist has to kind of put like little bullet tokens on the clue that they think best represents where the murder happened. So if I killed someone with a spatula, they would probably put like kitchen. And then everyone would be like, "Oh, spatula, kill him!" That kind of thing.
And maybe time of day could be like, say, evening, because you were making dinner, and then some
Exactly.
guy came in and annoyed you, so you just twatted them over the head with it.
They said I hadn't put enough salt in or something. Maybe they criticized my cooking, and they just caused me to snap. So one of the strategies of this game, and why I think it's a good one and it's worth talking about, is if you are the bad guy, it's a bit easier to actually have a little cover story for yourself, because everyone else has these cards in front of them, these weapons or whatever, and they're useless to them, but to you they're really useful, because if you say, okay, I killed someone with the knife, let's be boring, use a knife, the scientist is going to put their clue on like blood loss, for example, as the cause of death. However, you could have Pete who's carrying around a sword with him, a broadsword, as you do, Pete, or something like that. As you do, walking down the shops, carrying maybe a katana, whatever.
Be the katana or a broadsword. I think katanas be a bit fiddly. Actually, but katanas be on the waist though, because they're a bit fiddly when they're on the back.
Oh, fair enough. I'm going from like the Witcher school where you got 2 swords on.
Yeah. No, see, I was thinking more like classical samurai, or you can see him Zoro from One Piece, where he wears it on his waist, because it's easy to just draw out.
So it's not just like board games; you also get a bit of samurai trivia there. Well done, guys.
Yeah.
So anyway, so if I was the killer and I picked knife, I could then go, Pete has a sword, and I could try and divert attention onto him, and hopefully people will use up their guesses, because the police team have a finite amount of guesses to try and figure out who the killer is, and they only win if they manage to guess the murder weapon and the clue at the same time. So even if I was partially correct and got the murder weapon correct with my guess, if I got the clue wrong, then all the forensic scientists can say is no. They can't tell me I'm half right. They can't tell me anything. So I found this game is one of the easier, probably more comfortable ones to be the bad guy in, because you do have that layer of deniability, and if you're lucky, you can throw the blame onto other people a bit easier without just making up stories with nothing to back yourself up with, and you probably suffer less kind of error divided by 0 errors, Pete. Is that right? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I think part of the problem I have with a lot of the like Among Us, for example, when people are saying like, "Oh, Pete, what were you doing in the engine room?" and I'd be like, "I was doing a task. Describe the task." It was pressing buttons, and I'm like, okay. Whereas in this game. Yeah, exactly. Whereas in this game, it could be like, well, I mean, yeah, sure, the person died of blood loss, and I've got a sword, but Dan's got a kitchen knife, and Fred's got a butterfly knife. It can't necessarily be me, and because that's where I struggle with a lot of hidden traitor games, is trying to have a lie that I know sounds convincing enough that I can sort of push people away from me, because when people have me sort of cornered and I've got nothing I can use to sort of defend myself, that's when I basically enter 404 and just start erroring, and then people
hear the Windows error noise.
Exactly. You hear the Windows error noise, and then basically everyone's like, "It's Pete. It's got to be Pete," and I'm just there, just cursing under my breath.
It's the double negatives that make you crash. I'm like, Pete, no, are you not? Error.
No. See that. Those aren't working as much on me now, but it's more the if the lie doesn't work, then that I enter like a 4 next loop and just can't seem to get out of it.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, this game is good for that. It does give you
Mm.
kind of a little bit of cover, which is nice. I mean, well, I shouldn't reveal my tactics here, but my tactics is I thought actually forget I'm the killer, just try and pretend to be a cop. Like I just think like a cop. Like, oh, it's not me.
Okay.
It must be this person. So
Mm.
therefore, I'm like, obviously, I know it's actually me, but I'm trying to pretend it's not me in my own head, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's not me, so it must be this guy with the sword that did it. That sort of thing. Sometimes it is an interesting game though, because sometimes the clues can be very uh, either spot on, exactly what the
Yeah.
scientist needs to find you
Yeah.
out straight away, or completely useless.
Oh yeah, it's part of the fun. I love being a scientist. I love being the scientist because it can be extremely fun just getting the
Yeah.
right collection of clues down straight away. I mean, I think there was one time I played. I was meant to be the killer, but everything that came out, people were like, "Oh, that looks like Pete. That looks like Pete. That looks like Pete. Is it Pete with this, this, and this?" And basically, I got caught like within like the first 5 minutes of the first round.
Yeah,
And it's yeah.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I guess it's akin to like playing one of the Whitechapel games and basically getting caught as Jack on turn one. It's that level of embarrassment, but it is just very much just a case of the luck of the cards.
Pretty much. I mean, I did get caught on the first day. I think one of the recent games where I did pick the infamous PlayStation murder weapon. I
Yeah,
guess I was
yep.
losing a game, didn't take it well, and then
Yeah,
smashed someone's head over the head with the PlayStation, and I left some cards at the scene randomly. However,
yeah.
you managed to draw a clue card, and one of your options was it electric outage?
I think it was electric outage. Yeah, I think it was in
Yeah,
the
so
living room as well. I want to
probably.
say. Yeah,
Yeah, and you picked that, and people were like, "Oh, the PlayStation cut out of power," and I was like, "Damn it!" It was really hard for me to come back from that,
yeah,
and I think you caught me really quickly.
yes.
It's less of an embarrassment in this game than I think longer games like
Mhm.
Whitechapel or Whitehall, though, because literally
Yes.
games are pretty quick. We talk about half an hour, really. I would say per game, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would say like 15 to 20 minutes, depending on what clues come out and how quickly. Because one thing we've glossed over is there are 3 rounds of the game, and
Yeah.
at the start of at the start of the second and third round, the scientist can remove one of the 4 orange evidence cards and draw a new one. So, if,
Mm-hmm.
for example, they've got I don't know, why was the person killed, and that's completely useless to them. They can maybe remove that and go, where was the person killed? Oh, living room. Oh,
Yeah.
that ties in with the PlayStation that Dan's got, for example. And they can do that twice. And at the end of the third round, that's when basically everyone has to make their final, make their guess if they haven't guessed already.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or it's
yeah,
too late.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and that can be really, really tense. There have been a few times where I've been the killer, and I remember it's like everyone doesn't sort of like they guess me at the start, they don't get the right combination, they go, oh, I can't repeat then, and then it's down to like the last 3 or 4 people with their badges, which is what the token you hand in to make
Mm-hmm.
your thing. And I think to myself, cool, I just need one more person to throw away their vote, and then I win the game, because then I can just say, oh, it's X, or the president scientist goes, well, Pete, you're the killer, so you win. And then someone goes, "Oh, I think it's Pete with X and Y," and I'm just there cursing under my breath as he successfully pull off a Hail Mary in the 11th hour.
Yeah. I mean, quite often you do pull clues that are useless, and the
Oh yeah,
interesting thing as the scientist is you're not allowed to talk or give any
mm,
like gasps or sighs of frustration. So I
yeah,
actually like playing this online because I can mute myself a lot easier. So and
yeah,
I don't have the camera on, so people can't see my cries of
yeah,
anguish when
yeah.
they're so close to it. But then they steer off completely in the wrong direction to actually find him. I mean, I know it can be frustrating, but it makes it more rewarding when you do
Oh
actually
yeah,
remove the clue that was misleading the cops and then put a good one in that guides them the right way. Or you can listen to their conversation and they're like, okay, well, like, did I pick machine for cause of death? Like they fell into a machine,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and you put the cause of death as prolonged, I think,
yeah.
instead of sorry, the duration of the death instead of like I considered it quite sudden. If you fell into a machine, I thought you'd be killed quite
Yeah,
quickly.
that
Um,
was. I was thinking of the scene in Austin Paris where the guy gets run over with the steam press, and it's like quite a slow thing. I was kind of picturing that where like you slowly get your foot dragged into the
it's just
gears, and
like
then
a
it goes to
Looney
your
Tunes
knee.
cartoon, just getting
Yeah,
slowly
yeah,
squashed. Yeah,
exactly. Yes,
yeah.
that's how I pictured it. So yeah.
So, I mean, this is where there's a bit of judgment here because you picked
Mm,
it was the clue he drew was duration of the crime. It had
yes.
stuff like instant, brief, um,
Medium.
prolonged,
Yeah.
it's stuff like that. And you picked prolonged, which to me makes it sound like it's lasts several days, like
Yeah.
prolonged.
Yeah.
And I managed to well, you obviously were imagining a Looney Tunes cartoon or something slowly getting squished by a
Yes,
steamroller.
exactly.
So I managed to convince people, oh, it's not there, blah, blah. So look, if you fell in a machine, it'd be really quick. And I managed to buy myself a couple of rounds there. But then you got you drew a new one, and you managed to you knew that was misleading people, so you got rid of the duration card, if I'm remembering rightly.
I think so, yes.
Think so. And then people are, oh, he got rid of that, so maybe we were right about Dan after all. And then they actually got the murder weapon.
I think they got the murder weapon, but not the clue.
Yes, I still won that game by the skin of my teeth, because they did predict the murder weapon, but they didn't get the clue. Because I picked the clue was like I left like a ring at the scene.
Yes, yeah.
And you just did not draw any evidence tiles that really could point them to like any kind of jewelry or anything like that. I mean, I was hoping you didn't get like motivation, like love, like a wedding ring, like you can have like that kind of thing. But you didn't get anything, so they thought they got the murder weapon right, but they couldn't guess that and the clue at the same time. So I won by just them running out of guesses at the end.
Yeah.
There. So I got lucky there.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you could say that could be one criticism of the game, but on the other hand, I think it's just how fairly balanced it is, because you have situations where you'll get caught within the first 5 minutes of the first round starting, and we get instances where it gets dragged out like a man being crushed in a machine.
I think it's too short a game to worry about balance. I think because it's either you get caught really quickly, or you win the game pretty quickly. It's a pretty quick game. You either get lucky with the cards, or you get good cards, but then for some reason the police just go on a massive tangent. You're like, why are you looking at that one? And I know, was it Shane had a hard one the other day when the killer, who might have been Liz, picked I think starvation as the murder type. And for the cause of death list, you've only got blood loss, severe injury, suffocation, poisoning, stuff like that. But there's nothing really for starvation. So he picked suffocation, which was really tricky because it's hard to class starvation as suffocated to death. But he didn't really have a good option, did he? And I had a pillow. I was a good guy, but I had a pillow in front of me, one of my murder weapon cards. Everyone thought it was me smothered them to death with a pillow. And I'm like, Shane, what are you doing, mate? You know it's not me. Why did you pick suffocation?
I want to say, I think he put kitchen as well, though.
He did. And we did actually win that one because he did.
He put kitchen.
Kitchen, which steered us towards, and then he picked cruel. Because Liz hilariously loves picking. I think for her clue card, there's always like a lollipop card which she pick it up, and she picks that as her clue. So we imagined her sitting in the kitchen while someone's starving to death, tied to a chair, just licking a lollipop, waiting for them. And I think if he had the duration of the crime as well, and he picked prolonged as well. I think didn't he? Because it was over several days. So. In that case, it worked out for the coppers, though it was a hard course of death to kind of pin down a bit.
Oh yeah, and I think I even said, like, I think I saw kitchen. I'm like, oh, maybe it's Liz with starvation, because and I think people are like, why? And I'm like, well, maybe she, like you said, maybe she was just sat in the kitchen eating something and watching the person starve.
It definitely qualifies as cruel. So
but and that's like, and that's one thing I do like, is like the whole sort of like the whole neuron linking. If it's this, maybe it leads to this, to this, to this. The whole chain reaction is probably a better way of putting it. How it all flows together, and I really, really like that aspect of the game. Of course, as someone who at times has some very odd ways of thinking, that will maybe like think of a joke that makes absolutely perfect sense to me, but that's because my brain's gone through like 5 different tangents. That's how it all links up. And others are like, what on earth are you talking about? And I would say, I think like maybe that's like, again, maybe a bit of a downside, is that if your way of thinking or the way you see things, maybe it doesn't quite make sense to others, that can be a potential issue. But again, that's more of a nitpick. I can't really think of any real criticisms I have of the game. Because I think it's just so well made. I think the only thing I will say is we've barely touched on a lot of the the other roles, because I think you've got like a witness and you've got like an accomplice and that sort of thing, similar to games like Resistance and Avalon, where you'll have like Merlin and assistants of Merlin and Mordred and that sort of thing, people who will have just as much information as the original killer and are trying to sort of backstab the rest of the good team.
Yeah, that's a good tangent onto the other roles. We've not played them that much because you do need bigger player counts.
Yes.
But there are, to spice it up a bit, instead of just the killer, the cop, and the scientist, you've got a few different roles in there, which are similar to resistance types. You've got the witness who knows who the killer is. Okay. Actually, there's an accomplice as well. If you play with the witness, you have to play with the accomplice because the accomplice knows who the killer is and is trying to help them win. And the witness knows who the killer and the accomplice is. So they're not 100% sure who the actual murderer is, because that's how you win, finding the murderer. It doesn't matter about the accomplice. They know it's 50-50, one of these two people. And if the good guys do actually win at the end, similar to Resistance, the Avalon, that is, the bad guys can steal the win if they manage to predict who the witness was out of the rest of the players, because they, in theory, in story terms, they kill them before the trial.
Yeah.
So you kill the witness, they get away with it scot-free. So you've got that element of being the witness. You know who the evil players are, but you have to act like you don't. So there's a fun extra layer of strategy there. There are the expansion as well, which I've never played, which I really love to as well, where it adds a few more roles, which I haven't read about, so I can't really talk about, but I think there's ones like probably one where you're on the good team, but so you don't know who the killer is, but you still want your team to lose. There'll be that kind of saboteur or something. I think it's called Inside Man. You've got that kind of thing.
I was just looking at the cards that you sent in DMs earlier. You've got like protective detail, a lab technician,
I imagine they're like the bodyguard. I guess the detective is like the bodyguard, so I imagine they will pick someone to save, and if they pick the witness, maybe you're okay.
Maybe.
I think the other one is a different type of scientist, so maybe they do something slightly different, which might be interesting.
That'd be interesting. I was thinking like maybe they get some evidence that more, or maybe they get more evidence than the average player. But then again, if they
there'll
know,
have to be some kind of there'll have to be some kind of downside. There'll be something they do slightly better, or worse than the scientist.
I was just thinking like if they know, for example, it's the lollipop, for example. They know which player's got the lollipop. They can pretty much just zero straight in on them, especially when people start bringing other ideas to the table. But yeah, Inside Man is one I'm definitely interested in. But I've got to admit, you sent me as well some of the new murder weapon cards, and they've got sharks with freaking laser beams on their heads, and that's instant thumbs up from me. I mean, you've also got bees, you've got dart fox, you've got obsidian sword, that's cool, and killer robot. But laser sharks, sorry.
I'm looking at a picture of one with a death ray as well. It looks hilarious.
Oh man, that's
a literal death ray.
Yes, and I have to look into the expansion because I was looking on Amazon a few weeks ago because you mentioned a while back that it was produced in 2014, I believe, or maybe a friend of mine found that out. And I was thinking, oh wow, this game must be out of print because a lot of games from the last, I'd say 5 to 6 years, after a while they're out of print. But I actually managed to find it on Amazon for like 35 quid, which is a pretty reasonable price, I'd say.
Bargain, go for it.
Yeah, I'm just waiting, just need to pay off my last 6 months, my last six figures.
You've got your other addictions.
I got my other addictions, but I would definitely want to get that, and I do want to get the expansion as well, just because of like I love absurd things. So laser sharks, death rays, killer bees. Oh god, not the
bees, Pete. Not the bees.
They're in my eyes.
Bonus points to you if you get that reference.
Yeah, it was just the exact same thing.
I will also, just to finish off, I will say this is a great game for kind of lighter games nights as well. If you've got people who aren't inverted quotes gamers, I reckon they can still like this game because the theme is fun. It's not too complicated. I've played this with my family successfully. And it usually it's pretty good in that regard. I also like the funny stories it creates as well.
Yes,
you don't need to recreate the murder scene, but I find it funny, especially Liz with her evil lollipop. And one time she had a poison as a murder weapon and lollipop as the clue. So we just imagined her giving poison lollipops to children on the street, that kind of thing. Classic Liz activity.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes.
Were you the scientist in that game? I can't remember who the scientist was, but I think they even put the victim as a child or something like that, just to really cement lollipop.
No, I don't think it was me, that one. But yes,
I can't remember who the cops were, but yeah. Sorry, go back to your point.
I think I was definitely one of the cops, but I actually can say, this is definitely a game that I would play with a lot of people that maybe don't necessarily like long games. Like, I tried playing Resistance with a few people, and I felt like that didn't quite go down as well as I would have liked.
Oh, okay.
But I think this would probably go down better with some of them. I think had I known about a month ago that the game was available on Amazon for a decent price, I probably would have got it in time for my birthday event 2 weeks back. Wow, I can't believe how quickly that's flown by. But yeah, and I think this game just works really, really well. And I think you get the right crowd of people, and it can be absolute hoot. Definitely recommend it. And as I said, yeah.
My only regret is I didn't buy an American version. Just because for the theming, the game is set. It's called Murder in Hong Kong, but the EU version, the one I got in the UK, it's the only one that's shipped to the UK. The cards have got 2 languages on them. They've got in the American version, they've got either English and then like the Chinese characters for the words. So you'll have like, I don't know, starvation and then whatever the Chinese characters, which just looks cool, I think.
Oh, I agree.
What it looks like in China, and it fits the theme. But if you've gone for the European version, it's English and German.
Yeah,
so I've just got like just axe and then whatever the German is for axe. I'm like, okay, thanks. Good to know, I guess. But it's weird to see it where it's set in Hong Kong.
I agree. Yeah, so. I like seeing the Mandarin. I think that's the name of the Chinese language, because I know Japan's got like 3 or 4 different types of characters, and I don't know if China's the same. But yeah, I agree. Having the, I mean, as much as I like German, German's a fantastic language. I am, of course, a massive metalhead, and of course, when I think of German, I think of Rammstein and similar bands. So, I do like German as a language, but I do agree Mandarin does fit the theme a lot better. And the one I've been looking at is the European one, so yeah, it's going to be English and German. But
that's fine. I mean, it's purely cosmetic. I would definitely class it as just a nitpick. I would still give this game like as big a score I can, just because I've never had any problems with it. Everyone loves it, even fairly casual people to the board game hobby. Well, I feel like we've done a good summary of the game there, Pete, unless you have any closing arguments.
No closing arguments.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone at home, walking the dog, doing the dishes. Thank you for listening to our little show about board games and random geeky stuff. I'd like to thank my special guest friend, regular speaker. You're not even a special guest anymore, Pete. You're just normal.
I'm part of the main team. Yeah.
Exactly. Thanks again. Always good talking to you, buddy.
Cheers for having me.
We don't have the professional pluggers with us much at the moment, so I'm just going to wing it. We've got a website, DOALG.co.uk or diaryoforblinker.com. We also do all the Twitter, Facebook, all that kind of thing as well, and the Discord. So check it out if you want to chat to us, or if you've got any topic suggestions or questions you want to ask us. Well, as always, thank you for your time, and always be gaming. Bye-bye.
Keep gaming. Bye.